Happy Monday and welcome back to my guide to Pro Tools. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about I/O, and I just want to take a second to dive in a little deeper on buses and how we can control those and our outputs and that sort of thing. So first, we're going to need to define some key terms, and these are my definitions. These are not Avid's definitions. So let's start with output. As we know, the outputs are defined here, and this would be the primary destination for your track's audio after it's been processed with your inserts, after it's been leveled with your faders, and after it's been placed in the stereo field with your pan knob. The second one would be sends. Every track has 10 sends, and those are sent out after your processing, but before your pan, and you can choose whether you want it before or after your fader. And we'll talk about why you might want one over the other. A bus is the route that audio takes to get there. It's just a path, it's like a road. So audio would take a bus to get to an aux track or a physical output. Okay, and we talked about buses at length here. And so here we've got the buses that can route internally, and then we've got these buses. And the important thing to remember, although this is a path, it's sort of quote unquote hardwired to a physical output. So you can send something on that bus, but that bus is not, you can't pick where it's going to go. It's going to line 1, 2, line 3, 4, etc. The next one would be an aux track. So if you look at each track, it has a little icon right above the name. These little waveform icons signify that this is an audio track. The arrow signifies that you have an aux track, and this sum symbol shows that you have a master fader. So you can sort of see at a glance what type of tracks you have. And if you click on that icon, you can make the track inactive, but we're not going to do that. An aux track is a channel that we use to process a bus. Whether that is just a single track that's taking that bus, you can process that bus like a reverb or like parallel compression or something. Or if it's a group of tracks, like if you wanted to have a Vox subgroup, then you could apply group processing to that bus using an aux track. Last one is a master fader. And a master fader can be a little bit confusing because it's not really passing audio. You don't need the master fader there. For an aux track, you need the aux track in order to route the bus. If you just assign, these tracks to a bus and you don't have an aux track to decide where that bus is going to go, then that audio kind of disappears. That's not the case with this master fader. So if I just play a little bit of this session that I have here, this is a session that I got off of Telefunken's website. I'm not familiar with Tall Heights, and I had never heard Spirit Cold before I downloaded this, but they have a bunch of really cool multi-tracks on their website that you can download to practice or whatever. So I've downloaded it. Hopefully we don't get dinged by YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to play you a little bit of this, and we're going to see the audio is passing through the master fader, okay? Or so it seems. It's not actually passing through there. We're just monitoring this path with this master fader. So if I delete this, we still hear the audio, even though there's no master fader. And that's because the master fader, again, is not passing the audio. It's just monitoring that audio. So let's create that master fader again. And it automatically gets assigned to your first physical output. But if I change this, again, we will just be monitoring a different output. But the audio is still going to monitor left, right. So if I press play, we'll still hear audio. It's just not passing through this master fader. In order to see the audio, in order to see what the audio is doing, we would need to assign it to the bus that everything is taking. So why else would we use a master fader? I usually use it to put analyzer tools on. So that would be something like, Paz. I don't usually use Paz, but that's one that I know a lot of people have. make my spirit cold. We can see a lot of information about the track, but we're not coloring the track. Will usually put SonarWorks Sound ID on here so that it's putting its processing on my speakers and not on the track. And I will usually bounce my track through a separate bus. That's a whole different thing. Okay, so that was kind of a lot of information that we're just talking about without seeing it. So let's take a look at this diagram, which will show us a graphic representation of what we're talking about. You'll see here, I have my little legend. Blue boxes will be audio tracks, white will be auxes, triangle will be master fader. So the way that this session is currently set up is kind of like this. Let's assume we have a trio. Okay, got 3 drum mics, a bass mic, and a guitar and a vocal mic. This is all taking the bus monitor LR. See how these have monitor LR? That's the bus that it's taking to get to the physical output. I created a master fader track. Cool. Now we can monitor that path. Okay, but I want all my tracks to go through a mix bus. So I will create an aux track. And all of my tracks will now take bus 3132, which is an internal bus. I'll use a solid lines for internal buses, dotted lines for physical output buses. Okay, so they're all going to take bus 3132 to get to this auxiliary track mix subgroup, and then that is outputting monitor left right, which again is going through our master fader. Great, cool. Now I want another aux track so I can do some bus processing on my drums. So I can create another aux track, make sure that that's sending out bus 3132, so it still goes through my mix subgroup. And I can assign all my outputs to bus 1 and 2 and set the input of the drum subgroup to bus 1 and 2. Now you can see all the audio from my drums is going through here, and then the rest of the audio in the track is going to the mix subgroup, which is everything's going through that to get to the physical outputs. Okay, now let's say I want to do some reverb. I want to put some parallel reverb on my snare and on my vocals. I can create 2 aux tracks, make sure their outputs are going through bus 3132 to get to my mix subgroup, and then on my snare, I'll create a send and make sure that that send is going down bus 3-4. So now we've created a second output. We still have our output going down bus 1 and 2, but we have another output going down bus 3 and 4. That's going to our snare verb. We got to make sure anytime we do something like this, we got to make sure that our reverb is at 100% wet, go through here, and that will go back out to our mix subgroup. Same thing with our vocal. We create a send going through bus 5 and 6, which feeds our vocal reverb, and that will go down into our mix subgroup. I hope that makes sense. Let's make some of this happen in our session. Okay, we've already got our mix bus, but we're going to assign the bus. So I'm going to choose bus 1516, our last bus. And now we want all of our tracks to go through that bus. So using the modifiers that we talked about a couple weeks ago, I'll send everything to bus 1516. Cool. Now all our audio is going to the mix bus, and our mix bus is going to the physical outputs. Okay? So I'm going to want some subgroups. I'll do one for my cello and one for my acoustic. So I'll create 2 stereo aux inputs. Okay, I'm going to name this one cello sub and this one acoustic sub. And our inputs will hold down all 3 modifiers to send it to get bus 1 and 2 as the input to the cello and bus 3 and 4 as the input to the acoustic sub. Now I like to have these to the left of those instruments, match the color. Great. Okay, so now we have all these guys going to the mix bus. We have not sent these guys to their subs, so let's do that. Bus 1, 2. Bus 3, 4. If I'm going a little quick, it's a little bit intentional that I'm trying to show you how quickly you can move using these modifiers, using your hotkeys and key commands. Okay, so now if we look, we've got, if we play, all our audio is going through the mix bus. And
We always sing when our history's told.
All our acoustic instruments are going through the acoustic bus, and all of our cellos are going through the cello sub. Okay, so our routing is done in that sense. Now let's say we want some reverbs on. I'm going to create a couple tracks so that we can run a vocal reverb and a cello delay. But I'm going to do it a little differently. Instead of having to just look at these numbers, I want to see where I'm sending it. So I could go up here to my IO setup window and rename bus 1516 mix bus, and I could rename 1 and 2 cello sub and 3 and 4 acoustic sub. And you'll see that now everything says where it's going. Another way to do it would be that you can just say, okay, I want my lead vox to go to ascend, and I don't want to choose from the buses I have available. I want to create a new track. It's going to be a stereo aux input in samples, and I'm going to call it vox verb. Like all of the tracks, it creates just to the right, but I want it on that side of my mix bus. I'm going to do the same over here on my cello mic. I'm going to send it to a new track called cello delay. And I'm going to put that guy over here. Now, a couple things have happened. First of all, it created the aux track. It created the buses. So if I go back up here to my buses, you can see it's created 2 stereo buses without subpaths, in addition to what I already had. It's assigned those inputs. Now, these are just going to monitor left, right. So I want to make sure that these are going to my mix bus. And these little boxes popped up. If you click on them, it creates this pop-up, which controls how much we're sending to that bus and how we're panning within that bus. If we just want the pan to be exactly what this is, we can click follow main panner, and that will just mirror this or follow the main pan. I don't want to do that. So last cool thing we can do with this is if we hold down Command and click on the arrow, creates this little drop-down window. You could hide it again, but I want to keep it. And here you can quickly and roughly access the volume, the pan. You can mute that send, or you can do pre-post fader. So let's make some reverbs and delays here. Okay, here I'm just going to pick deverb. I'm going to go with the at-large hall, set the pre-delay to, what is happening here? 50. Cool. Let's leave that as is. Let's go here and pick mod. What? Mod delay 3. Okay. I'm going to set this to 650, let's say. And this one to 700. Link this. 30. Okay. Let's start there. Now, if I hold down Option and drag one of these guys, it will create a duplicate. So I want reverb on both my vocals. So just drag that over, and now I've got this. Let's say that I had this already set. Let's say like that, and I dragged it over. It would keep those same settings. So I'm going to do that, and we're going to just pop these open. I really want this. Let's try it at 7. I like round numbers. Okay, so now they're both set to 7. Got the pan set where I want them. And let's see how this reverb sounds.
We always say when our history's told.
Cool. Might be a little
If
strong.
only we knew the things we know. There's a question age.
Okay, it sounds great. Let's leave that as is. Let's go check out the cello. Let's find a part where the cello is a little more active than that.
If all good things ever come and go.
Okay, that's not quite right. let's unlink these. I'm actually going to want this one to hit first for a couple of reasons. Doesn't really matter for now. Let's go like this.
If all good things ever come and go, let me back down slow. If all good things ever come and go, let me back down.
Cool. I like that. I'm going to leave that as is. Might bump that up a little bit, actually.
If all good things ever come and go.
Cool. Let's hear that all in context. We mute these guys.
If all good things ever come and go, let me back down slow. If all good things ever come and go.
Okay. Obviously, if this were a mix, I'd be doing some other stuff as well. But this is just to show you how you can get some reverbs going, how you can route your stuff, how you can create new tracks quickly, and just move quick when you're either recording or mixing. The last thing this can be really useful for that I'll just show you real fast is if we were to, let's not do that. If we were to send all these guys, let's say, to output line 1 and 2. Let's say you've got your singer's headphone amp going to line 1 and 2. Hit all these as pre-fader. Pre-fader just means that the moves you make here won't influence these moves. So if I hold down Command, Option, Shift, click that, it will put all these guys at 0. If they're listening to this cello, first of all, we would not want that. Okay. If we were listening to this cello part and we decided we wanted this lower, or rather, if they decide they want less cello, but we want to hear that full cello in our headphones or in the control room, we can turn it down for them and not for us. That's why pre-fader can come in handy. So here we've got our headphone mix, and here we've got our control room mix. And so if we wanted to, we could create another master. Did I delete my master at some point? Let's create another master. Okay. Line 1 and 2. So here, this is controlling our main mix, and this is controlling our headphone mix. And we could, whatever, put a limiter on here so that can't damage them. Okay, that's a good example of why you might need 2 master faders and how you might treat these differently. I hope that was helpful. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.